Good morning, everyone. It's Brenda Meller with Meller Marketing. I'm bringing you back for another edition of Social Media Pie, where I bring inspiring people from my network to inform and educate you. And very, very excited because today I'm bringing Lynne, and I want to say my friend, but also my mentor. She's inspired me. At one point, I was her client. At one point, she was my client. I feel like our paths have crossed in so many ways, but good morning, Lynne. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm just made to see snow outside my window, but other than that, I'm doing well.
You know, it's crazy. I got up really early this morning. I'm in this accountability group call with Jan Griffiths. I don't know if you know who she is.
Yeah.
But 6:30 in the morning, I was like, who's up at 6:30? It turns out I got up, I've done this a couple times now. But then afterwards, I went for a kind of a power walk around the neighborhood, cleared my head, and it was cold, but it was sunny. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be a beautiful day. And now I'm looking out my office window, and there's like a blizzard going on here in Michigan right now. What is happening?
It's May in Michigan, or April in Michigan. What can I say?
It's like very temperamental in Michigan this time of year. Right?
Yeah.
Well, before we get our conversation started here, I just want to kind of introduce the topic. So I reached out to Lynne, and I think we originally had this pre-COVID. We talked about having you come on LinkedIn Live. And then I think, we were supposed to go, I want to say was it in February? And I think you had some things to move around, and we said, let's push this out. So we rescheduled it. Right. And I think at the time when we rescheduled it, it was still pre-COVID. It wasn't like life was crazy yet. And then we rescheduled it, and here we are in the midst of things. But, I still feel like this topic is relevant. And now even more than ever, businesses are having to change a bit of what their approach will be. And Lynne and I were talking a little bit before the show got started, guys, on this. And I hope she shares the story with us here today. But before we jump into that conversation, I just want to say good morning to all of you and welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Whether you're watching this on LinkedIn Live, on Facebook Live, maybe you're watching this on YouTube later on, or some other network, we just want to welcome you and thank you for joining. And I've got this little scrolling ticker kind of running below us on the screen just to remind you, as you're coming into these live broadcasts, really an important thing to think about is to get into the conversation and build visibility for yourself. So one of my tips is, when you jump in a live session, make a comment, like the video right away if you can, because that helps us out, but also make a comment below and just let us know, where in the world you're watching from. Are you here in Metro Detroit? Are you in Macomb County, which is where I'm located? Are you in Oakland County, which is where Lynne's located? Are you in some other state in these wonderful United States or some other country in the world? Just let us know where you're watching this from. So Lynne, so as we get this conversation started, I want to just kind of briefly mention, you and I don't even remember when it was we first met. Do you remember? I remember it was when I was at Walsh and you were doing your company, but do you remember what it was that
it could be in forum, but it was definitely before Walsh became a client of ours. So I don't really know. I knew you before that.
Yeah, I feel like it was through, were you ever involved with Jan Hubbard and the Business Leadership Institute at Walsh?
I think so. Yeah.
And maybe it was like through one of her conferences and events. But anyways, you and I have been friends for, has it been 10 years? I feel like it's been, if not.
I feel like it is. Yeah.
It's been a while. And we work together in, like I said, several capacities throughout the years. But what I'd like to do, Lynne, is if you could start by giving folks a little bit of your background so they kind of understand what it is that you do, who you help, and a little bit about the products and services that you offer as it relates to our topic for today, storytelling, marketing, and defining your brand story.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. So my company is Your People LLC. It's at yourppl.com if anybody wants to check us out. And I was a journalist for a long time. I am from Michigan, but I lived in New York and Washington, D.C. after college. I went to the University of Michigan, go blue. And I was a journalist. I've always loved to write. It's my first passion. It's really how I find meaning and communicate with the world. And I moved back to Michigan in the mid-90s and I worked for newspapers here. And then I went freelance for about 15 years. And while I was freelance, I was raising my family. I was teaching college English. I was doing all kinds of things writing. And then we all know that in 2007, 2008, things changed. Journalism sort of crashed a little bit along with other things in the economy. And I had very little kids. I was becoming a single mom and I needed to figure out how to pivot and support my kids. And so I created Your People, which was to use my communication skills to help businesses. So it has grown and it's become public relations and marketing. But what I do is I really bring the storytelling techniques and skills that I've grown up with and been trained in to get companies out there. And so we use a really complex mix, I guess I would say, of storytelling, relationships, and higher purpose. Those three elements are what we need to use to sort of form the foundation of a marketing campaign. And we started in the early years just sort of taking people on, taking companies on, and helping them get out there. So whether it was to build their website or pitch them to media or get them on social media, whatever it was, we started with that. And then what I found over and over again was that even companies that were pretty well established, maybe even in second stage, didn't have a well-defined story. We didn't know the words we wanted to use, the origin story, any of the details that we wanted to be consistent with in our communications. And so I'd take a step backwards and I would start to use my reporting skills from my journalism days and ask CEOs and managers in the company, you know, how did this come to be? How did you evolve over time? What's your main focus? You know, what are you hoping to do to make a difference in the world? Not just make money, but how do you want to impact the community and truly make a difference? And so we were doing it already before I sort of encapsulated it as storytelling marketing. And now we have a very deliberate way that we work with people. And so they do come on and in the same way that they did in the beginning, but we have a lot of clients that will come on to build their foundational narrative, which is a term that we use to mean that story, that core foundation of words and phrases and touch points that we're going to go back to again and again for any kind of marketing messages. And we work on that. And that often includes developing the mission, the vision, taglines, core values or company principles, things like that. And then we'll go from foundational narrative to marketing strategy, which can include media relations, social media, blogging, e-blast, website, etc., advertising, logo design, all of that. And then we start to implement. And so that story is where everything begins and where it all goes back to so that we can be consistent.
Awesome. And I love kind of the whole process that you just described for us and how you're helping to make this process really meaningful. I mean, I'm using your words, meaningful, but you know, sometimes when we are working with organizations, I kind of feel like they're, and you use the word narrative, so I'll echo that. The narrative is kind of hollow. You know, we are a company that produces widgets and they're the best quality widgets in the world, and you can't find widgets anywhere better than ours. And I'm like, well, there's something missing there because now you just commoditize what you do, and there's not the rich history or the why. You know, that goes along with it. And I also love how you're kind of, you know, creating that foundational messaging because you can always point back to it. And on that note, gosh, what interesting times we are living in, and what wonderful things for your clients to have a foundational message to point back to right now, because it can be a challenging time. You know, what do we say about ourselves? How do we approach doing business? Can we lead out with messages right now and not appear tone deaf or inappropriate, you know, not lose any of our current clients or audience members because we're not doing those right approaches. So, you know, going back to this topic, now today we'll be talking about a storytelling, marketing, and defining your brand story. And, you know, so for those that are kind of listening in to this broadcast here this morning, I mean, what is storytelling marketing? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's pretty intuitive. You know, you're telling a story as a way of grabbing attention and building a connection, because I really believe that marketing is a relationship. It has to have mutual benefit for you, for me. So we can't just say, you know, come buy our widgets, but it has to have something in it for them. So yeah, they're gaining whatever purchase they needed, but there has to be something deeper because we live in a connection economy and stories are the currency. We don't actually need anything, which I think this pandemic is showing us how easy it is to actually cut things out of the budget and simplify our lives. I was amazed that our very complicated family budget with 4 teenagers went down like this really fast. And I'm like, oh, what were we spending money on for so long? You know, of course we can't go out and do all the things we were spending money on.
Right.
So
you don't have that entertainment budget. You know, you can't go to the movies and even go to the mall where, I don't know about you, but walking around IKEA or something like $300 later, like, what did I buy?
Right,
what is
right. And actually, wow, I have enough clothes this whole time.
Right.
I'm not even wearing everything. It's so funny. But anyway, so that mutual benefit is really important. And you have to think about transactions, sort of transcending transactions. Like, it's not just I'm buying a sweater or I'm buying a widget. It's, am I gaining something that deepens my purpose in the world, that makes me feel better about my place here on this planet. And I know that sounds rather lofty and deep, but I sort of live on that level. And I really do believe that each of us is put on earth to make a difference. We have our each unique purpose, and our lives are about figuring out what that is. And how do we contribute? How do we make a difference so that we leave a legacy beyond just our kids, but we've somehow impacted the world and we've left it better when we're done. And so that meaning and purpose is a really important part of storytelling marketing. So I believe that's where it starts. Why did you get into business? Why do you do what you do? Why do you love what you do? The origin of the creation of the company, what all those details are super important, because there could be a lot of companies in the same industry and they're all doing the same thing, but each of them got there for a different reason. And I think that's really interesting. And then that humanizes the business a bit, and people do business with people. So we need to have that human element of the story to bring us, closer together and give us a reason to choose this company over that company. Yeah. So that's in a nutshell what storytelling marketing is all about.
That's great. And I'm are there any stories, I'm using your words again, stories that you can share with us, and whether you'd like to share with us specific clients that you're working with now or that have worked with in the past where they've used this approach, and how it's helped them to change their business and make their business, whether it's more successful or more vibrant or just connect. And I think I kind of like what you're saying. It's like leaving a legacy. So it's connecting the team to what it is that they're doing. They all have kind of that joint purpose. Are there any examples you'd like to share with us?
There are so many.
It's one on the spot here too. I'm like, I probably should ask you this in the pre-call, but you guys know when I go live, I'm just like I don't know if this makes me like a good reporter, Lynn, or like a bad reporter, but I'm like, if you're talking, I'm like, I always feel like, the storytelling approach is one in which you say things like, for example, and then you tell a background story. So now I think you've given us kind of the overarching concept, but now I'm looking at like, can you give me a couple examples of things,
Yeah, no, for sure. So we have, in my company, we're specializing a lot in education clients. We have a lot of schools, and hey, Darren, by the way, we have a lot of schools and universities that are clients. And we have specialized for a number of years in Waldorf schools, which is a very specific alternative mode of education that's around the world. And so you would think that they're all the same because they're all Waldorf schools. But we had one in Sacramento. We have one currently in Toronto. We have one in Detroit. We've had one in Buffalo, New York. And so they're all sort of with the same pedagogy, but they have unique circumstances. And so, for example, the Toronto one that we're working with right now is a very urban school. It's right in the heart of one of the biggest cities in the world, very cosmopolitan. But Waldorf is a more homey and, back to basics kind of approach to education, very hands-on, not very technology focused at all. And so we're looking at this urban setting, but yet they're very focused on a nature-based education. So how do they do that in an urban setting, and why do they do that? Why is that such an important part of the ethos? So those details, the fact that it is in the heart of Toronto, but there's this nature component to education is a huge selling point, and it's core to what this school is all about. So that has to factor into the education. Whereas the Detroit school that we've been working with for 6 or 7 years is in the heart of a very historic neighborhood, and it was born out of the civil rights movement. And so it's always been really focused on equitable access to education, to a private education, and their accessible tuition program has made that possible. It's been very successful. So that's a different element of storytelling within the same world of Waldorf. They have the same values, but thank you. It's Detroit Waldorf School there. So, yeah, so pulling out those elements, and then also just trying to explain, what is Waldorf and how do we explain it. So if you want to look for the Toronto one, it's waldorfacademy.com or .org. Okay. Likewise, we have a client, Clear University, which is a very small business university in Livingston County, Michigan. And so it's a business education, which you can get at how many hundreds or thousands of universities. But how they do it differently is really important. And the fact that they've been around for more than 100 years. And it's a tiny university, but yet it's really vibrant. And it has this amazing sports athletics department that you wouldn't expect from a really small school. So there's a lot of elements, you know, and the sports component with the business component actually interweave. And it's super important that that's part of their story and why it's there. You know, its origins back 100 years ago by immigrants that were really trying to find access to higher education when they didn't have it, you know, but based on where they came from. And so they started the university, and they're looking to be different and open to all people and provide a really stellar education. So there's different pieces to the stories that we put together, and I'm just sort of, you know, touching on it. There's one that I want to mention that was a client I had for a brief time. It's a manufacturing company called Systematic Manufacturing in Macomb County, Michigan. And a young guy started it, amazing entrepreneur. But it was funny. I mean, he's literally making widgets, like literally. I went there and I was like,
yeah, like,
you know, I was
like literally, like, what is a widget? Well, he makes them. He really
knows. You know, like, and it's you know, manufacturing, really not such a consumer type of thing to work with, but it was so artistic when I sat and talked with him about how he got to doing it, who he is, and then I watched the processes. And I am not technical minded in any way, and I was just mesmerized. And so it got me super excited about a sector that I never would have been excited about, and it all had to do with, you know, taking time, slowing down, listening to the stories, getting to know the people behind it, and watching the processes, and then all this magic unfolds. So it was just, I was like all excited about manufacturing when I've never been interested in it before. So there's a lot that you can discover when you take the time to look for it.
That's awesome. So, I mean, we've got probably a variety of people that are watching this conversation here today as we're talking about storytelling, marketing, and defining your brand story. And there's probably employees of large corporations that are maybe struggling with this concept. But then there's probably, you know, folks like me, the small business owner, the entrepreneur, the startup, who's maybe already into that process of running their business, and they're having to kind of change gears, or thinking about now their jobs, you know, been cut off, furloughed, laid off, and they're trying to think about alternative paths for their story. So I know in the past, Lynne, that you've done some workshops. Do you have resources for other folks if they're looking to learn more about the journey and maybe don't have the budget yet to work with you? Or tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so actually that's a great opportunity for me to mention something I'm working on too, called the Make Meaning movement. And so this idea of meaning and purpose has been something that's, you know, been prevalent throughout both my journalistic career and my marketing and PR career. So I'm right now working really hard on launching the Make Meaning website, which will be at makemeaning.org, hopefully the next week. And it's just exactly this. And I have a wonderful resource. It's the Pause and Pivot Worksheet that will sort of take you through, like, maybe you've lost your job, or maybe you're just sick and tired of what you're doing and you want to leap to the next stage of your life, or you've always wanted to start a company. And so this worksheet is something that is a great resource for helping people sort of get that creativity flowing and take them to the next place. And I'm also offering a free Make Meaning hour next week. So if people want to contact me and I can add them to my list, I can give them both resources and they can take part. But the idea is that, you know, meaning and purpose factor into foundational narrative in a company, but also in a personal brand. And so if you're looking to make a change, or if you want to deepen what you're doing and try and start a side hustle even, this idea of defining what drives you, what inspires you, you know, why do you want to do this? Sort of the what's your why is a really important aspect of that. And so I'd love to help people through that, because I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and I believe that when you have passion for something, the sky's the limit. You know, you can dream it and it can happen, and then it's even better than you expected. And so, you know, losing a job or having a halt or losing clients is not the end. It's sometimes making space for what you really wanted to come in, you know? Yeah. And so, so those resources are available, totally free. I'd love to add you to my list. And the Meaning movement is going to both work on marketing with meaning and having that sort of, be overarching all of your marketing messages, but also finding your personal meaning and using that to make your next decisions.
So I'm going to just pop up your People website up on screen here, Lynne, because I think you have like a subscribe. Yeah, there's like a newsletter sign up in here. So I'm imagining, you know, once the new site is up and then the resources are available, you'll be messaging people from this newsletter too?
Yes. Yep.
All right, perfect. So that's a way, guys. I'm going to pop up her web address up here on screen if you're interested in learning more. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like the lazy marketer. I'm like, show me where it's at and give me the resources. Like I like reach out to Lynne and email her later. We're like, can you just send me to a place where I can just like drop it in and then she can message it to me later. And here's the place. If you go to her Your People website, you can look for some of those resources. And then Lynne, I see all these lovely little icons at the top of your screen because you've got a podcast too, right?
Yes. So the Make Meaning movement grew out of the Make Meaning podcast, which we are now publishing weekly. It was every other week for a while. And there's just so many amazing people out there doing meaningful things that I now know how to podcast from home. So I've been, gaining new skills during this pandemic, but we're interviewing wonderful people, sharing their stories. And so that's something that I would love to, get some suggestions for. If you think that you have a great story, you can contact me and suggest yourself as a guest. You can go to the contact form at yourpeople.com and just tell me what you want to do. So I want the Pause and Pivot worksheet. I want to join your Make Meaning Hour. Hey, I'd love to be on your podcast. And I'll send you a questionnaire. It's not that easy. I want to know a little bit more about your meaning and purpose, but it's a lot of fun. And we have a lot of great people. So check that out for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. And the podcast was great, you guys. I've listened to it and I'm following Lynne on social media. And anytime I see her pop-up broadcast up, back in the day, it was like the podcast would be the things that I would put on in the car as I was driving back and forth between client and networking events. But now it's kind of as I'm doing work, I try to find like a podcast. So Lynne does some really great interviews there with different people from different backgrounds. And I love the whole Make Meaning focus. She had me on her podcast several years ago, and I'll drop the comment below too, so you guys can listen to that. But it was kind of like talking about my journey to entrepreneurship and, leaving a corporate job. For me, I never was one of those people who kind of like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. But I had an opportunity to kind of figure out where I wanted to go next. The universe nudged me forward, and I kind of told a little bit my story. But focusing on the, how do you find meaning in everything that you're doing? And I think, Lynne, especially as we get older, when we're young, we're like, oh, I'm gonna live forever, I'm gonna do everything, and then you start to realize, gosh, do I even like my job? Do I even like my company? Do I believe in what I do? And it becomes even more personal, to have something where you feel like you are giving value and you understand what it is that you do and you are valued and you are appreciated. Yeah. And I love the interviews that you do with different people because they bring such really great perspectives from diverse backgrounds and industries. And I see there's even like some younger adults that you have in your interview, and then you have working professionals and you have entrepreneurs. So I just really admire you, Lynne, and I look up to you, and you're such an inspiration to me and to so many. So I just want to, say thank you for that.
Well, thanks, Brenda. And, I'd like to have you back on the show because you were one of my first guests, and I was impressed with you back then. And I just have seen your business develop, and your passion, your energy is so amazing that I think there's a lot more we could talk about. And, I've also developed in my podcasting skills. And so we could sort of do a part two and see, how you've grown and evolved over time. But the podcast is funny because it started as, I brought my journalistic skills into it, but it started as sort of like, I'll use this as a marketing tool and new clients. And it became a passion of its own. And I really loved, I love interviewing people. I love sharing their stories and having these deep conversations. I always walk away with such insight and inspiration. And I feel so lucky that I get to talk with these people. Some of these people are, heads of universities and CEOs and musicians and writers, and they're just everyday folks who are really kind and generous, and we can learn from anybody. So the podcast, it's just taken on a life of its own. It's a fun thing to do.
That's awesome. And I when you had me on the show, I was like, I'm in awe of you anyways. I'm like, you've got so many different areas and aspects of your business, but I was like, this is like she was, she had me come into the podcast studio. I had the whole headphones, the jumbo microphone. And I was like, wow, this is like a whole operation. It's really impressive being a part of the process. But I'm even thinking you say like, you just love that experience for interviewing people. And for me, like the LinkedIn lives of these broadcasts that I'm doing, it's not really for me about getting business from people or even getting visibility, for the viewing. It's more like, in the beginning I was doing LinkedIn lives where I was sharing marketing and entrepreneurial tips. And then I was starting to do like one interview a week with another person. And then, everything kind of collapsed with the pandemic with events. And I'm like, okay, so my client work's not coming in right now. I've started doing some LinkedIn for job seekers, helping others, giving back. But then I'm like, well, what else can I do to help others? Well, I've got a platform, and the live LinkedIn Live community is by you have to apply for it, so not everybody has it. So I'm like, well, I can help to shine the spotlight on others. So why don't I start doing more interviews? And now I'm doing 3 to 5 a week. But the intent is it's kind of selfish, I'm picking people that are very interesting. Like you and I feel like we could just talk for hours.
Yeah, sure.
And I learn from people along the way. But then the other benefit is that I'm giving guests like you the platform to talk about your story, and also to help all of you who are watching us here today. So on that note, Lynn, I'd like to take a look. I'm going to look down at my phone, guys. And when I do this, I'm showing you my phone. I'm not doing this to be rude or check my email. I'm actually looking up your comments. So while I am doing that, I want to remind you guys too, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, you have to submit comments through LinkedIn. If you're watching this on Facebook, this is a little workaround. If you're watching this on Facebook, you go to my facebook.com/MellerMarketing. If you leave a comment there, I can actually pop your comments up on screen. So that's what I did earlier with Darren Lawson, and then we had Mariam and Keitra as well. So if you pop your comment there, I can put it up on screen. Hint, hint, you get a little bit of marketing and promotion for yourself and for your business. So on LinkedIn, we're currently at 194 viewers, Lynn, and 31 comments. It looks like they're continuing.
Wow, that's amazing.
So yeah, so really nice. So I'm going to give some shout outs. So if you guys haven't commented yet, comment now, and I'll give a shout out to your name in here. And if you have any questions for Lynn on this topic today of storytelling, marketing, and defining your brand strategy, drop those in here. So I'm going to say good morning to Juman, Alak, Deepthi, Amy, who's coming from Michigan, Kelly. Hey, Kelly, how are you doing? From Myanmar. So we are definitely international already here, Lynn.
Wow.
We have Juman is from Detroit. Rich Carr is from Seattle. Hey, Rich, how you doing? Catherine Bigenho, it's so nice to see you, Catherine. We were on the accountability call, the crack of dawn this morning, and nice to see you as well. Catherine, make sure that you're following Lynn on LinkedIn. And we have Yulia from Oakland County, Melissa from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, Mavita Burris from Troy, Michigan. Do you know Mavita?
I do. Hey, Mavita, how you doing?
I feel like everybody knows Mavita. If you guys don't know Mavita, you got to connect with her because she's absolutely awesome, and I just love her so much. I'm in her fan club. We've got Yoli Randall from St. Louis. We've got Therese Iglesias from West Bloomfield, Michigan. Hey, Therese. Zandy from Swaziland. We have Eva from Oakland County, and we have Gunnar. And Gunnar is asking about my show, so we'll follow up with you, Gunnar, on that. Juman says go blue. Ava says go blue. Yeah. We have Tamar from Kingston, Jamaica. Jabir from India. Hello, Jabir.
Good morning. Wonderful.
Yeah. We have Kubus from South Africa. Tracy Wick from Novi, Michigan. Diane. Hi, Diane. Diane was on yesterday. She is a published author, and she was talking about getting published. And Lynn, you're a published author too. You've gone through that process now.
Yeah, I have 8 published books, actually, because I'm a writer first and foremost. 2 are poetry. The rest are nonfiction. And I'm actually working on the Make Meaning book right now, which doesn't have a title yet. So yeah, and it's almost done. So that will be out later this year. Yeah.
Is it now, Diane, what she was sharing with me yesterday, a lot of really good tips on getting published. But one thing I remember is like, just get the first one done and like, don't overthink it. And I'm even thinking the book I'm working on right now, I could probably have like 10 mini books. If I just pulled one of it out and just got one published, and then I get a little bit of momentum. Was it like that for you? Like the first one was the hardest, and then once you've gone through the process, it was a little bit easier for the following book?
My first book was my master's thesis, which is a poetry manuscript. And so I had 2 years to work on it in grad school. And then I was really lucky that a small publisher on the East Coast published the book of poems in time for my graduation from grad school. So that was very cool. And then after that, it was sort of like opportunity just sort of knocked at the door. Like I thought, oh, I want to do this. I don't know if anyone's going to want it. And then introductions led to introductions, and I got lucky and people published it. But it's not a money-making endeavor. It's a brand building, and it's also sharing your perspective and your words with the world, which is incredibly valuable. So,
and I'm looking at my bookshelf because I bought one of your books, and I'm trying to remember which one. Do you have one with like a picture of a fruit on the front of it, like an apple or something like that?
Yeah, it was Stand Out from the Crowd.
Okay, so when I I'll give a pause in a little bit, and I'm going to look for the book because I want to pull it up and show people. I'm like looking, I'm trying to figure out which bookshelf I have it in the office. But at any rate, fellow publishers and authors. So Diane, thank you for joining. Vicki says she likes the statement transcending transactions.
Thank you.
Mavita, human element, my favorite. And Yoli says when you love what you do is so important. Why you love what you do is so important. Totally. Amy Lazar is saying, have we read Stories That Stick by Kendra Hall? I haven't heard of it. You, Lynn?
No, I'll check it out.
Stories That Stick. Amy, if you have a link to that on Amazon, drop it in the comments if you could. Emmanuel, hello from Detroit. Emmanuel was on our early morning call this morning. Nice to see you, Emmanuel. So let's say this question, Lynn, is for you. So this is a question from Juman, and she asked, what do you recommend for someone who has to introduce themselves for a speaking engagement? So Juman, are you asking what advice do we have for you in terms of giving your bio to someone? Or are you looking for advice on if you want to pitch yourself to be a speaker at an event? And I'll ask Lynn to pick either one of those options to respond.
Yeah, well, well, it's hard to get speaking engagements, and I've had a lot of clients who want me to book them. There's a lot of free opportunities if you want to be speaking. Rotary clubs, chambers of commerce, all of these different organizations are looking for talented and interesting speakers. And so as long as you start locally and grow your audience, that will lead to business growth and other speaking engagements. If you are looking for guidance on how to write your bio, I actually have a worksheet, so you can contact me and I can send it to you. I just redid my bio and it's totally different. It's just more of a fun bio, also written in third person, which is kind of funny, but just like, you know, taking a step back from yourself and saying, what's remarkable about me? What's different? What's my story? And really writing it from a storytelling perspective makes you come to life a little bit more. So I can help you with that as well.
All right, awesome. And I'm waiting to see him. I keep refreshing my phone, guys. I keep refreshing it in LinkedIn to see if she's still watching and if she can clarify what she's looking for in there. So let me pull that comment up one more time. 41 comments now. So we're getting 208 views. So
you're amazing.
Yeah. Oh, so Juman says, I'm already a speaker and I want to tell my story. So it sounds like your explanation helped to kind of set that up.
Good.
Another question, and I'm going to look for my book while you respond to this one, Lynn. So this question is from Yulia, and she's asking, what advice would you offer to someone who is just starting their business?
Well, that's an open-ended question, but I would say that, you know, it's a step-by-step process. There's a lot of components in starting a business, and it can be overwhelming. And so I'm a big fan of writing things down and making lists and then physically checking it off when I complete something. There's actually psychology that talks about what it does to the brain when you are checking off a task that you've completed and how it motivates you to do more. So I'm old-fashioned in that way, but I would make an outline of all the different steps of starting a business. And everything begins with your story. And so getting very clear on why you're starting it, what inspires you, what you bring to the marketplace that's different from the competition, your unique value, and what people will walk away with. Plus, knowing your clientele is really important. And this is a hard question. So understanding who is the ideal client for you and getting as specific as possible will help you to market more easily and bring in the right audience. So a word of caution to people, I've had clients say, well, anybody could be my customer. And that may be theoretically true, but it's not realistic. You can't market to everybody. And so the more you can specialize and develop your demographic audience and be very clear in who you're a fit for, the more likely you will be to be successful. So I think that's a great place to start, and just don't be overwhelmed by all the many steps in building a business.
What I loved when you just said too is, you know, well, who's your product? Well, everybody can use it. Well, no, realistically. So, you know, like what I say is, you know, I have my catchphrase, like I help people unlock the power of LinkedIn. And I've had some people challenge me that say, well, what people specifically? And I've even kind of kicked around the thought of, do I modify that in my LinkedIn headline that says I help LinkedIn members unlock the power of LinkedIn, but you're already on the platform, you know, so if you're on the platform, you know, and I've struggled with that. Do I say I help business executives, or do I, you know, help CEOs unlock the power of LinkedIn? But, you know, it works for me. And I think the category of what I do helps to explain that a little bit, but I loved that, that advice for people just getting started. you have to define who those people are. It can't just be people. It's not animals and people, it's just people, but you really have to kind of get niche on that expression. So really great advice there. I can't find the book, Lynn. I know I have it because like when I set up my home office, it's in here somewhere, but I'm going to drop the link in the show notes below after we finish the broadcast here today.
Well, I appreciate that. That book's kind of dated because it has specific information about social media from probably like 8 years ago. So the overarching principles are still valid. And I'm happy to send that book to anybody who wants it, but just wait for the Make Meaning book because that'll be more up to date. And that should be out probably by the end of the summer.
Okay, awesome. So, and I'm going to hold you accountable to that too. I'm going to reach out to you in the summer and be like, where's that book at? Got it. You're like a doer. I mean, I think you've got the momentum that's already kind of going with what you're doing in your business. And I really feel like you're going to get there. You know, you'll like, you say you're going to meet that deadline, and I definitely know that you will. So a few final of comments that did come in here. Just trying to follow them up again here. Jennifer Lerner Friedman says, and I just want to share this with you, and this made me feel really good. She says, watching you is a nod to female empowerment. Thank you, ladies. So Jennifer, thank you. That's so sweet, isn't it? Yeah. I feel like, what's that, Rosie the Riveter? I feel like I want to do like a pose with you, Lynn. Like, can we do this? Like, yeah, like a little bit like that. Like this will be the YouTube still. Love it. Love it. I try to do, whenever I pull these videos down and put them on YouTube, I've tried to do something a little different. Sometimes I do the, high five or like,
this way.
You have to reverse it. So sometimes I'll do, and I've got my Sugar Creek coffee mug here. Sometimes I'll do the clinking of the glasses, but I try to do different fun things because it's, it kind of brings out the personality of the interview on there. But thank you, Jennifer, for watching. Annie's from Michigan. Yoli says, good morning. Denisha, nice to see you, Denisha. She's from Michigan as well. Mavita, this is amazing. She loves that we were international. Yeah. Mavita, we were international on your call too. I love that we reached through this platform. We can reach people from everywhere in the world, different time zones. Really neat here. All right. So I think that might be it on our comments here. Jennifer's kind of echoing what you said, Lynn, too, in terms of that business advice. Take one thing at a time, develop your story, start your social media brand, your network, etc. Do you know Jennifer?
I do very well, personally and then professionally. And we're actually in a sort of fellowship cohort together right now with the Shalom Hartman Institute.
Oh, so that's very cool. Yeah, I remember you telling me about that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Lynn, so in any, we're kind of wrapping up our conversation here today. Any closing comments with the group and kind of going back to this topic of storytelling marketing, defining your brand story, or alternatively, are there any additional resources or tips that you want to kind of give to those that are listening in today?
Yeah. So, the thing is that business and your story are an ever evolving thing. They're not stagnant. So whether it's your website or just sort of the underlying content that drives your marketing and communications, it needs to be revisited every year or two and be open and free to make changes, to edit as your circumstances change and let the business show you what it's going to be. Because, a lot of times we hold really tightly to a certain concept and we start a business with one vision, but that vision can grow and it should. As you get better at what you're doing, you define who you want to work with. I think that you should really just go with it and let it flow as it's going to unfold, and the story goes with that too.
Awesome. And I'm going to pop your LinkedIn up on screen here, Lynn, and just remind people, if you're looking to learn more about Lynn and the business that she's doing, definitely look her up on LinkedIn. And Lynn, are you open to new connection requests from people or for followers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I always tell people, when you reach out to connect with folks, make sure you include a personal note. So reference to Lynn in your invitation that you saw her on the LinkedIn Live here today. If there's something particularly meaningful that she offered in terms of the advice, definitely mention that in here as well. And I'm just going to give a quick shout out here to Tisha Hammond, who just joined us on Facebook. Give her a little comment here as well. And then, and the other thing I want to just remind people is the Your People website. Let's see if I can find your URL here. Navigating on through StreamYard right here. So there we go, yourpeople.com. So check out the website here. Click to subscribe. You'll get notification. And then in the future, you'll have the makemeaning.org. So maybe, Lynn, we should do another LinkedIn Live a couple months online once you have that site up and running and some more resources. So
let's book it. I'm on board.
Awesome. All right, guys. So sorry, go ahead.
I said, thank you so much for having me.
No, it was a pleasure, Lynn, and it was really just a fun conversation. Glad to reconnect with you. Hopefully the world will open up again soon. I think we're going to be a little bit timid on getting ourselves out there. Maybe we don't hug, but maybe we fist bump or wave or curtsy or something. Right? Whatever it is.
Yep.
Yeah, but pleasure having you join here today, Lynn, and I really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, guys. And then just a reminder too, if you're not already subscribing to my email newsletter, see if I can do this up on screen here, make sure that you subscribe. I will send out an email about once a week or so with an updated show listing for future interviews, as well as LinkedIn strategy tips, and encourage you to watch that along. So that's it for us today. We're going to go ahead and end the broadcast, and have a great day, everybody, and stay safe out there.